Comic Timing is member supported by listeners like you over at patreon.com/comic timing. We thank you so much for your continued support of the show in any way that you give it. And for as little as $1 a month, you can go ahead and join in on the behind the scenes action, get some diaries, get some extra content whenever we can produce it. And we thank you very much for all that continued support that you give over at patreon.com/comic timing. Hey there, folks. My name's Ian Levinstein, and welcome to episode 227 of Comic Timing. I swear to God, it has been 227 years since I've had the two guests on that are joining Brent and I for this episode. And hey, it's old school. It's just Brent and me are as the regular Comic Timing folks on this episode. And Brent, behind the scenes, skipped Ruth's Chris to join us for this very episode. So I want to thank you very much, as Sean pointed out before. Oh no, spoilers. Sean and Jim were on this episode too. That Mr. Casina passed up on steak just so he could talk X-Men. How about them apples?
Dinner was decided at the last minute, and I had already committed, so I'm honoring my commitments.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And as previously stated, it is the first Raging Bullets crossover on Comic Timing in God knows how long. Sean, Whelan, Jim Segulin, welcome back to Comic Timing.
Hey, how's it going, eh?
It's a pleasure to be back here. It really has been a long time, which is very unusual for us.
I know.
This is the first one in person, so to speak, because we can see each other.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Technology. Probably don't want to. Yeah.
Technology has advanced and evolved in ways that we did not expect it to. There was this whole pandemic thing. It's a long story. Either way, we're all on Zoom now instead of Skype, and we're better off that way in the long run. We get to see each other's faces.
I like the Skype ringtone. I missed that.
The one thing we've got to worry about on this one is if we don't do one after this, we're going to have some serious questions.
Well, look, this one is a long time coming, and when the announcement came that there were going to be a new slate of X books, I figured with the new 2.0 format, by the way, probably the podcast that went the longest in episodes before getting to a second season, I might add. So job well done on that one, gentlemen. I applaud you for that. I truly, truly do.
If you think about how much we normally talk when we're doing our episodes, it's fitting that we went 18 years for season 1.
I still remember what was it, like episode 27 that had like 12 parts or something like that. So.
I think I did call one of them Schwa-E or something.
Yeah.
Outstanding. This is going to be, as we said, part 1 of the crossover. We're going to be talking 3 books on this particular episode. We're going to be doing X-Men. We're going to be doing NYX, and we're going to be doing X-Factor on this episode. And in release order, that those are actually in release order how they came out. X-Men came out first, NYX about a week or so later, X-Factor a couple of weeks after that. And honestly, this is a new era, a new generation for the X-Men. We wrapped up Krakoa on a recent episode of Comic Timing, and I just figured it made absolute sense for us to review these first issues of the books. And some of us may have read a little bit more than that and can get into it. But
Before we start,
yes.
Should we give the new Comic Timing listeners, since we have had some new ones join us, the history of Comic Timing in Raging Bullets?
Oh. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, BK's Bullets was originally a segment for Raging Bullets, essentially. So that is where that gets its start.
Brent's origin story starts with these two gentlemen on screen.
Indeed. And then he accidentally listened to me and then accidentally fell into a role of co-hosting. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, in a reverse order, though, before I had started podcasting, I had done some call-in spots for CGS, and Ian was doing Geek Speak at the time. We went to one of the first group gatherings of that, and you had kindly asked me to come on and do an episode of Geek Speak with you, which was actually the first full podcast I had ever done, or the first programmatic recording, because that was a radio show too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. You're absolutely right, man. Back in the day, for Brooklyn College Radio, I released Geek Speak as a radio show on Brooklyn College Radio with a listenership of 3, and then converted it over to a podcast and then released it on the feed. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, and those of you who may have followed me from Comic Geek Speak back over to Comic Timing, Geek Speak is another show because I was a smart human being and thought to myself, no one could have possibly come up with that as a title for a show already. And then lo and behold, I found out I was not so original, and the rest, as they say, is history. Oh man, that was back in looking at it here, Sean, that was back in 2005.
A long time, my friend.
Yes, indeed. Showcase Spotlight number 3 right there. How about them apples?
19 years. Ugh.
Oh my God. And how long has Raging Bullets been running at this point?
18. It was. Wow. We did it in March, so I mean, it's we're a little over 18 years. We're heading towards year 19. So
crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Well,
your show is a corporation. It can vote according to the Supreme Court or whatever. It's a person.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
At times it feels like that. It has a mind of its own.
I've been saying that about podcasts for years, quite frankly, so that doesn't surprise me. Gentlemen, I want to get your thoughts first on this new era of X-Men, From the Ashes, as it has been titled, and just general impressions from the beginning here, and then we'll talk a little bit about X-Men number 1 and whatnot. So, and I threw a whatnot in there for you, Jim, in particular.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. Jim, your thoughts on From the Ashes?
Well, I have not been reading X books at all, so I'm jumping into this, pretty much raw. And I think that's kind of the fun part about this, when you have a story that I can go, who is that? Oh, that's cool. Who is that? Oh, that's cool. Because there's like the main names I know, obviously. I'm a longtime prior X reader. But the whole thing that happened to Krakoa, that happened to Xavier, I honestly have no idea what happened to Charles Xavier, whether he is actually dead or if this is just a ruse or whatnot. I know nothing about that. That's part of the excitement that I'm having in this reading, because Sean and I did, Dark Phoenix Saga, and that got me once again back to reading X's. But I'm reading it back then. I haven't gone forward. I'm actually trying to get caught up to 1980 something. So I got, oh yeah, sure, no problem. But I jumped on this, so I'm jumping right here, and I'm going forward from these ones. But there's one of the books I know absolutely nobody on the book at all. And I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. That's kind of cool.
Do you still not know what's happened to Charles Xavier?
No, I still don't know.
Okay.
Other than what they've said in the book. So if what they've said in the book is actually what happened, then sure. But comics sometimes are the swerves and all that. I have no idea.
That's intriguing. That's intriguing to me. Well, because it's going to come up. So it has to.
These books' existence and what happened in Krakoa kind of essentially fall on the fall of Charles Xavier, and we will discuss that in general, at some point during this. But Sean, as the further storied reader and whatnot, what are your thoughts on From the Ashes and this new beginning?
So I've been reading the X-Men since the early '80s. It's not fair to say on and off, because on and off has typically been, if budget didn't allow it, I jumped back and grabbed everything and ended up reading it and getting caught up. So it was, I don't think I've ever really stopped since then per se, other than I had to do some catch-up ball from time to time. Krakoa is one of those stories where it's that, because we were doing a DC-focused podcast and exclusively and focusing on trying to read the entire line, I always kept reading Marvel books, kept reading independent books as well. X-Men have always been my jam. My first two characters that brought me into comics were Batman and Spider-Man. When I caught that at French's Pharmacy, when I caught the issue, it was the issue with Belasco and Ileana when she was pulled in and aged and all that stuff that happened, and there was the alternate dimension X-Men, and that was my first issue. And that at that time, that's when the hunt began of trying to get other issues beforehand and get caught up on who these crazy characters were. So I've been hooked ever since. The Krakoa piece to this, the closest thing I can link it to is when Morrison did the X-Men. It was a very unique approach to the X-Men. It took the concepts, it played with them in a very unique way, and got really heady in what it was doing. And I love that era. It was a very, very good era. After that era was done, they had to it was a shift. And that era wrapped up, and feels very much the same, with the same kind of energy, where this is a jump on point for new readers. And it's designed to be that story wrapped up, and they're definitely heading in a very different direction now from where they left things there. I'm enjoying this so far. It's going to be fun to I think, talk about these books. I'm enjoying the books to varying degrees. I mean, they're all a little bit different, so I think it's going to be fun to get specific as far as those pieces. But I'm having fun with being able to have this kind of conversation around it. It's fun to talk Marvel like this. I'm going to be curious to see what books, what books are you digging out of this? And I think it could be very different we got 4 different people here. It could be very different for all of us, which books we're enjoying and which ones are, not grabbing us, because where they're at right now.
I guarantee you that will be the case, quite frankly, as if there's one thing that I know more than anything else after doing this show for nearly 19 years is that Brent and I have very different taste in books. So if it turns out that he likes all of the same books that I do and dislikes all the same books that I do, something is wrong with the multiverse, and I need to get it investigated immediately. But nonetheless, Brent, I know you really like the Krakoa era. And even if during the episode itself, both of us, our brains kind of like exploded a little bit with the amount of continuity that was thrown in there for the time that it existed. But your thoughts on this launch pad for the new stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to follow a run, like the Krakoa era to me, like I'm Morrison's X-Men. I did not like the last storyline. And then I liked Ultimate X-Men. I could follow that one. And the Krakoa era for me was a great jumping on point for the X books. And I loved a lot of it, most of it. Now that that's over, it's like, man, that was to me, that's a championship run. You know what I mean? That's the Chiefs last year. And now they're going to try and replicate it again. Well, guess what? There's no architect anymore. Everybody seems to be doing their own thing. What I love the most about the Krakoa era is, it was a pain to read because everything crossed over in each other, and they're kind of doing that here. You see that with X-Men and Uncanny and what was it, Rogue, Exceptional X-Men, and Kitty Pryde. They're kind of doing stuff, but it's all the timey-wimey stuff's weird. Like this is number 3 and this is number 2, but there's no singular direction here. I know it's from the ashes. They're all over the map because they're all spread out, but to me, that's not a direction that's been enjoyable so far. It doesn't feel like. It feels like in a year and a half or 2 years, we're going to have another line-wide relaunch of the X-Men or another refocusing. Like this to me feels like the blue, gold, and red era before we got Krakoa so far with just these first issues. It's not the same. I'm bummed,
Well, it is definitely not the same, but I think that
some books are better, but yeah.
It's by design, though, that it's not the same, and as Sean said, and as you're saying, essentially, some things are gonna land better than others because it's a very different scenario right now. I'd say you compare it to the blue and gold stuff from before this, and that was one of the weakest eras of the X-Men, quite frankly, because like it definitely felt like filler. This does not feel like filler to me. This feels like. At times even reminiscent of the 80s and the Australian era, where the X-books are spread across a bunch of different locations and locales, and so are characters. and there isn't necessarily going to be the same sort of crossover you might get there. Nobody thinks anybody's dead this time around, which is the big change, because, obviously that was the point of the 80s for a little while there, is that, a lot of people thought that the X-Men were kaput. And there's a lot less Siege Perilous this time around, which makes me very happy, because the Siege Perilous is a whatever you want it to be device, and we don't have that here. But instead, we have a team in Alaska. We've got a team in like the New Orleans area. We've got a team. We've got teams all over the states, essentially, and I believe even one in Europe at one point. But starting us off here with X-Men #1 by Jed MacKay, who's been writing the Avengers, and Ryan Stegman on artwork. I remember saying when we talked about Krakoa that I wasn't that big a fan of Cyclops' outfit, and now that I've actually seen it in action in the book itself, I think that this is some stellar art by Stegman. I think that's something that they've definitely gotten right with this X-Men #1. Is a art direction that makes sense with the book. And I'm digging a lot of the stuff that's going on inside too, because it does feel very, very different. But obviously your mileage may vary. With this X-Men #1, Jim, in general, it's an X-Men #1. So clearly this is going to be one of the flagship books along with Uncanny. Did it grab you?
Oh, big time. Big time grabbed me. And again, part of it is because I knew most of the team. I know Cyclops, Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, and it was funny when I first saw Juggernaut, I'm like, is that the Juggernaut or is this a new Juggernaut? Because why is he being a good guy? And so it was kind of interesting diving into this and seeing this. So of all the teams, this was probably one of the most comfortable with, just because this had a really good classic X-Men feel to it. Partially because Cyclops is in charge, So I this 100% had me from jump. And starting off, of course, with Beast being the initial introduction to it was always a kind of a neat thing, because Beast is such a cool character. So yeah, I was very happy with this book.
Well, it's a really good thing that you say that, Jim, because this is a reset for Beast.
Which Beast is this? Is this Beast clone?
This is Beast clone.
I think it is.
This is Beast clone, okay? Jim doesn't need to know that necessarily. However, long story short, this is not the Beast you would have gotten a year ago, because Beast went to a very, very dark place.
Yeah, the last 45 issues of X-Force is very dark.
Yeah, and this is a reset with that character. They essentially, this is the Beast from the late 70s, early 80s, essentially.
This is like the pre-Bendis Beast, right? Because that's where he started.
Exactly. Hence why, he's much more the Beast that you would be familiar with, Jim, because he doesn't have all that baggage. And I think even the X-writers thought to themselves, maybe if we're going to use this character, we may not want to go with the one that's megalomaniacal to start with here. A lot of stuff happened.
That shocks me. Again, of all the characters, he's the one I would never have wanted to see do that.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. Because a bunch of shits happened in X-Men books even before Krakoa. Like Beast brought the original X-Men back into modern day during Bendis's run. And that was a great run, but at the same time, people were like, Beast, you're playing with the space-time continuum, man. And he was like, whatever. It's another day. Then during the Krakoa run, it was like, Beast, you're running all these black ops, and you don't seem to really care whether people live or die. He's like, it's another day.
Beast cloned Wolverine countless times and sent them on suicide missions, and then just left them there, and then made those mindless Wolverine clones like husks, and used them as his own personal army to go and kill other people. It's dark. And it got darker from there. It's
what fine.
The heck? Wait, the best line there, and it's the truth. And he got darker from there. I mean, you could have left it at that and been, man, that's dark. It's like, no, he was just getting warmed up.
Dude, what the heck?
Where do these black eyes he's got come from? Because that's not something that I've ever seen, I guess. So I'm like, is this a throwback to the 70s and 80s?
It is, yeah. It's a throwback to the initial design of Beast, where he had those black eyes under, essentially like accentuating the fur a little bit.
Like, is it black fur, or is it just a shadow that's always there? That's what I can't figure out, because there's one panel where he's talking to the police chief, and it looks like it's paint, like it's not fur. I don't know. It's constantly there, so I can't tell what it is.
Yeah,
The pattern on his fur now.
It's definitely design aesthetic, and like maybe like making the eyes look a little bit deeper in than they used to be. But it seems to be across the board, because not just Stegman's drawing him that way. So, Sean, let me get your thoughts on X-Men #1 and this new beginning here for the X title.
Just going back to Beast really quick, one of the things I really liked was not necessarily a narrator per se, but his descriptions of Cyclops and things like that. I liked his use there because he was kind of like our gateway into this book, because we're doing a reboot of sorts, a soft reboot where, it's definitely, this is taking place after the Krakoa era, but we need kind of some easing into this. If we've been reading that as far as what's going on here and where they're heading. I liked his use as a narrator. I liked which is kind of unique more to this book than some of the other ones. And that part I actually enjoyed. You mentioned the artwork before, and it's funny. I think I had a very similar experience to you. I enjoyed it the first time through, but I wasn't like through the roof. When I reread the book, I'm like, I really like his art. And you mentioned Cyclops' costume in particular. I think those are the pieces where, as I got through it the second time and I had a chance to kind of process what they were doing here, it is a very pretty book. I really like the art style on this one. The action sequences are great. I love the team up pieces with Juggernaut and Magic, who are, two of my favorite characters. I think it has the right balance of a true classic characters. Actually, it's funny, Jim, you don't know some of the characters, but there were characters in this beyond maybe some of the ones that have been around for quite a long time who actually have been around longer than we're realizing now. I like the balance of eras, because the X-Men now have become multiple generations. There was the original core team that were around for years, then Giant Size X-Men #1, and there was a whole group there. Then there was, the Morrison years and New Mutants and all that kind of stuff, and Gen X and all that stuff that's happened along the way. There's a lot of characters that have been introduced, and I think this team is comprised of characters, at least as conceptually, that are meant to kind of touch point a lot of different people. Which I don't think is a bad idea right now. I'm very curious to see where this goes. I like that the book's also about feeling out a team dynamic. Yes. They're not all there yet. This is not a team that has been together a long time. We've got some loose cannons on the team, which I always enjoy. And I liked Wolverine's appearance in this, but I'm glad that he's not the loose cannon on this team. Mm-hmm. I love Wolverine, so I'm very into Wolverine. I actually like where Wolverine is in this universe right now. I liked his appearance here. I like that it sets the stage for the fact that I'm out. Which was, I thought, a nice piece of this one. He's like, I'm not ready to join you guys right now. I don't know that I ever will be. Yeah. And it kind of sets the stage where he's going. Brent was alluding to that before, that like there's some crossover between these books. And I actually like that part where it kind of sets the stage for it. But I don't want him to be the loose cannon on this team. No. I find it far more interesting that we've got other characters that are providing that vehicle, because I don't feel like I'm getting the same thing again. I don't need to see Wolverine and Cyclops butt heads yet again in another book. Give me a different sort of flavor. Yeah. So that part was working for me. I'm enjoying this book so far. I want to see where it goes. And that's kind of where I'm at on this one. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not 100% there yet, but they did the right thing that you got to do with the first issue and get me excited for issues 2 and 3.
Yes. 100% the case. And I would say that I think setting the stage was the smart way to go with this issue, with the Beast tour of the facilities and seeing where they are in Alaska now. Jim, Alaska's gonna, I mean, from the era that you're currently investigating, the Dark Phoenix era, Alaska means a lot to that, and will continue to mean a lot to the X-Men, and it means a lot to Scott Summers in general. So I think that setting it in Alaska, even if it is at this essentially repurposed Sentinel base, is a smart touch and gives the X-Men a locale and a setting that is unique and familiar at the same time. And as you said, Sean, I do agree with that it's smart to do a bunch of X-Men from different eras. This book in particular, you get two original X-Men. You get Beast, you get Cyclops. You've got two members of essentially the Wolverine in the X-Men era, if you want to look at that, with Quentin Quire and I'm blanking on her name all of a sudden.
Psylocke.
No, not
the other girl's Temper.
Temper.
Thank you. Yeah, Temper. Psylocke obviously being from the 80s, and I'm glad to see that she's keeping her British look for the most part. Not really the biggest fan of Japanese Psylocke, and
no, this is not Betsy Braddock. This is Quanon.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. So Betsy Braddock. Jim, in the Krakoa era. I'm not a Psylocke expert, so please don't quote me. Yeah. But apparently there's a Japanese woman named Quanon, yes, and then Betsy Braddock, and then Betsy Braddock took over her body at some point in X-Men history in a story I've never read. And then in the Krakoa era, they separated Betsy Braddock, who's a white lady now with purple hair. Mm-hmm. She's Captain Britain. Oh, and now we're left. Yes, we're left with Quanon, who still goes by Psylocke and still has the same powers, just with a different personality that seems like is yet to be defined.
Mm-hmm. But she's mainly going as Psylocke as a code name at this point. Yes. So, yeah, that was my confusion there. And quite frankly, Stegman's artwork, although excellent, kind of had me a little bit in between as to which purple-haired person we were talking about here. But it is indeed Quanon, and you are right about that now that I look it up. So
there's a good spread, Ian, if you have the Marvel Unlimited open. I think it's page 14 where not spread, they all have a X design aesthetic, and it shows it there on page 14. It's the one where Cyclops is looking away after the big Sentinel battle inside the cave. There's a panel with Kid Omega, Cyclops, and Temper showing their basically like Frank Quitely-ish X designs on there, and then you add in Juggernaut with his helmet X, and it's like, all right, everybody's got an X design. Where's Beast's? Where's Magneto's? Like, come on, we're 5 for 7 here. Yeah. And I don't think Psylocke has one quite as pronounced as that one, but it's pretty interesting to see. Like, all right, well, there's something going on here.
But her belt's got a crisscross.
Does it? I've seen it in some panels. It looks like it's 3. Yeah. So I'm looking for that 4th one. I don't know if it's consistent or not.
When she that sequence where she's going, I'm going for Logan. If you take a look at it, there's
okay. Yeah, the cover for number 2, you can kind of barely see it behind her arm here, but it is there.
Yep.
All right, I'm with you.
It's funny with Temper and that Kid Omega guy. I had no idea who they were at all. 100% had no clue, but within one issue, it got me wanting to figure out what's their deal. What's up with these two kids?
Oh, and of course, Herman.
I was like, it's kind of like, I'm like, this is kind of neat. I dig this, and it reminded me back. They reminded me back of, the young X-Men, so they're the kids on the team, and that was one of the things that I loved about the X's, that, it was, teenagers and all that kind of stuff. So, I seen the young kids on the team, but still having the adult mentors with them, gave me a very comfortable feel for this book, whether that's actually what's going on, because of everything that happened in the stuff I didn't read, I don't know, but I was comfortable in reading with this, and I was comfortable with my ignorance on who these people were, just because you could clearly see these are good guys. You can clearly see, okay, these are X's. Yeah, I'm down with the X.
That's what Jed MacKay, I think, excels at as a writer is that you don't need to necessarily know full backstories for characters in order to get invested into a story. And I felt that way about his Avengers run, the first couple of issues that I've read. I've read about 6 or 7 of them, and here it's on display as well. Like you don't need to 100% know every single thing that's happened to the X-Men over the past couple of years. This is a restart. These are new characters to some people, not to others, and we go from there. Why is Juggernaut good now? Well, he's been good before. He had a run during one of the weirdest and not so greatest X-Men runs by writer Chuck Austen, where he was a member of the X-Men back in the early 2000s. So it's not his first time. And also, as a relative of Charles Xavier, you know, the relation to the X-Men has always been there. So it makes sense that he might occasionally go on the side of good. He's always just kind of been like a big kid anyway, that throws tantrums more than anything else. So if he's in a good mood, he'll help out people when he needs to. And I think that's kind of the situation that Juggernaut is in right now. He's better off with this team than he is elsewhere. And I love the interaction between him and Illyana. I think that's one of the bright spots of this book as well.
And I didn't expect that. That was something that, like, because I love Illyana. I think she's a great character. Kind of doing the buddy cop thing between the two of them really worked for me. Yep. I want to say one thing before we go any further. Can we please shout out Brent's explanation of Psylocke? Because I mean, I was like sitting here nodding along going, first of all, if there's one thing that we should all embrace right now as comic fans, no matter where you're at and how much whether you loved or didn't love that whole arc for her and what that whole looked like, it was a long period of time to get there. Only in comics can you explain something like that, and we're all nodding along, going, "Oh, okay, that's it."
I'm going to credit comic book reading for giving me the ability to parse really complex stuff and boil it down to some very simple very simple thing to present to a program manager who's only worried about money and schedule. So that's kind of that brought me into my engineering job. There you go. That's what I do.
I owe it all the comics.
Yeah, that's awesome. Brent Inquirer and Kid Omega talk about the backstory on him. Like, you know, he's been a villain who's addicted to the drug kick. He's had the Phoenix. He's had all these different things happen to him.
But a discombobulated head in one of those Krakoa stories last year.
Yes, he was. He definitely got better since then, but he works best as the bratty kid who thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room, but clearly he still has a lot to learn. And that's the field that he is filling in here, and probably will continue to fill on this team. And then bringing in Zorn, by the way. I'd almost forgotten about Zorn. Talk about backstory. My God.
Zorn and Magneto are on the same team.
Yes, they are. That's true. Yeah. Once upon a time, Jim, in a galaxy far, far away, during Grant Morrison's run on the X-Men, there was a character named Zorn who was introduced. He's the man with the star in his head, essentially, and he was supposed to be this, you know, Zen mutant that kind of grounded the team in a lot of ways and helped them out when needed, and was there. Got rescued by Scott and Jean back in the day. Then later turned out to be Magneto in disguise, but no. There was another Zorn, Zorn's brother, which eventually got introduced to try to explain why there was a Zorn in the first place and why Magneto was able to take his place. But no, there's another Zorn. Whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters here is that this is the Zorn that we have now, and everything's fine. The world is fine.
Dressed in the same jacket you last saw him in 20 years ago.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and frankly, it's representation of the cool Grant Morrison jacket era. So that's fine by me. But he's. It's a lot easier when you just think of him as one character. But there was a really, really complicated time there where we were like, "What the hell?" Don't ask us about Magneto's inability to walk, by the way, because that we don't have an answer to yet.
There's a lot of weird Wikipedia things Jim is going to look up after this episode and be like,
Yeah.
Wait,
Zorn,
I'm sure he's going to look up
Psylocke,
why they call him Max.
Beast.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's
Because wait, that's a thing. Jim, did you catch the fact that they kept calling him Max?
I one of the many questions I had for you guys was going to be, what the hell's up with that? Is this Magneto?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
there was
one, how is he a 90-plus-year-old man looking that good? That's one thing.
Long story. Long story.
But the Max thing was something I was going to ask you guys about.
Yeah, he's been reset age-wise like 4 times in the books. His body's been rebuilt. There have been clone bodies that his brain has been put in. So no matter what, unlike Reed Richards, and the war keeps changing for Tony Stark and Reed Richards and whatnot. You can never take the Holocaust out of the character of Magneto. It just will not work. So, yes, that is the explanation. This is like the 4th Magneto body he's had, essentially. His real name is Max. That was established in a Magneto origin book a couple of years back. That Eric Lenscher was yet another alias that he went by for many years. And Max, I think Eisenhart, if I remember correctly, is his full name, his original name, because it's closer to the name that someone who went through the Holocaust would actually have. So they just, decided to establish that in the mid 2000s in an origin book, Magneto Testament, which was very good, by the way. And frankly, I'm A-okay with them keeping with that. It's complicated when a character like Magneto has had 47 names. Like, is he Magnus? Is he Eric? Is he Max? Is he Bob? Is he Joe? Is he Steve? Like, no, we're sticking with Max this time around.
And Magneto was always the guy that said, "Call me by my mutant name, not my human name." And now we're back to Max.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is also a very different Magneto than we've had in the past. It's not the first time that Magneto's been on the side of angels, quote unquote, with the X-Men. He's been with them, in the 80s when he was leading the New Mutants. But ever since the Bendis era, he's been a lot more associated with the X-Men and less of a villain. And I kind of like him this way. He's diametrically opposed to Xavier's vision, but at the same time believes in it. And him being the Professor M of these X-Men really does make sense in that fashion for him to be there. Will he continue to be there as on the side of angels for this entire time? Who the heck knows? But I like him in this position. I think it works pretty well.
One of the things I do recommend out of this, because it's coming up organically in this conversation, is if you're a lapsed reader, or maybe this is your first foray into X-Men, it's worth going back and reading these stories. Yeah. And not because you have to understand all this. Like you mentioned, there's Wikipedia and stuff like that. If you want to come up to speed really quick, it's very easy to do it nowadays. Mm-hmm. But the actual stories that led to this is well worth it. We've referenced Krakoa more than once in this. Mm-hmm. That is a great run. Well worth reading. I don't feel like you have to read it to understand this. You don't. I'd read it just because it's fun to read it. Mm-hmm. One of the nice things about comics is comics don't have to be homework. But the lore and the history that's in the X-Men, it is wacky. Some of it's really out there. Some of it's I will say a lot of it is just downright fun. So it's well worth seeking some of this out and understanding how we got here for a lot of these characters. And it really is much easier now too to kind of connect the dots, because the X-Men sometimes is a little bit of a chore to kind of go, what stories do I need to understand why Magneto got to here? I think there's plenty of pages out there now that will outline Magneto essential reading for you you should really seek out and find out some of you can find out exactly how he got from Eric to Max and everything in between.
Wikipedia is your friend, okay? You can definitely go and read the stories when you have the time, but if you just need a quick refresher, sure, sometimes even reading the Wikipedia entry can make you go screwy in the eyes from the amount of history that's in there, but it's a good primer. It's a good primer, definitely.
I want to second your point about Magneto Testament, though, because that is a very good story, and if you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading that one. It's a good one. I'm also saying it to Jim because Jim's going to want to read more about Max.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm already creating my reading list. So yeah.
The way that Weapon X is the definitive Wolverine origin, I'd say Magneto Testament is the definitive Magneto origin. Cool. I think that does it better than any other book has before. So absolutely with that. Speaking of Wolverine one more time here, I know, Sean, you mentioned earlier that you're glad that you're not going to get that back and forth between Cyclops and Wolverine again. Even though he's in this book, he is not a member of this team. And they utilized him in good we need to save him attitude in this X-Men #1, but he's off in Uncanny X-Men and he's off in his own solo book for the most part. So you're not doing an also ran here of sticking Wolverine on every single team just because he's Wolverine. It's like, sure, put him in issue 1 because you're going to put him in issue 1, but he's not necessarily going to be there all the time. And I'm glad about that.
Well, I like that they rescued him here. It wasn't about him coming in and saving the day and the team needing him in that capacity. Mm-hmm. There was a reason why, because of his location, they had him infiltrate, and they needed to go and rescue him. And I really liked how that all played out. I thought it was a nice use of him. It did serve as a setup for where his mental state is going into Uncanny X-Men, which I don't mind when they do that. I think it's a good tool, and it worked really well. But you were mentioning the nods earlier back to the kind of desert era, and I mean, boy, there was a sequence there where that was really reminiscent of a very beautiful cover from the past.
Yes. Oh my God, yes, the which was also referenced in Deadpool Wolverine. So that is yes. Whole bunch of skulls. Let's just put it that way. Whole bunch of skulls.
Hey, Ian, do you remember where this ship came from with the X on the front? Is that coming out of the Krakoa era that I'm not remembering?
Yeah, I think that's where it came from. It's also possible that it may have just popped itself up in between issues, and that's just what they're going to be using now. But if memory serves, it was Krakoa era, as in one of the many Krakoa books. So it's hard for me to 100% place where that did actually start. Oh man. But, I'll say one more time on the costumes, that I like that it kind of feels like it's a cross between, X-Factor era, like original X-Factor era, the 90s and modern. With these new X-Men designs. And most importantly, they didn't try to put pants on Beast, because Beast doesn't need anything other than whatever, undies he's running around in. Like I've always hated when they try to put clothes on Beast. It's like, nah, man, he doesn't need it. He's blue and furry. Just let him be blue and furry. That's it. Unencumbered Beast.
You know what sequence I really liked in this? Speaking of Beast and Cyclops, their interactions when they were looking at the Sentinel.
Yes.
And the reasoning why Cyclops left it there, because it has a lot of layers to it, especially if you read Krakoa. Yeah. These are people who they were living in their own nation that they had created, which caused a lot of unrest. Mm-hmm. As far as them entering back into society, like entering into Earth society as it is. They aren't going to be welcomed with open arms. And it actually really did a nice job of setting the stage for, we've got an X-Men right now where people are going to be wary of them. They're going to be a little nervous of them. These are people who, many of them viewed themselves as gods, and actually promoted themselves as gods to people as far as the next stage of evolution. So I like that they're not throwing that out the window. This was a big run And I think if they made that mistake, I think you're really going to lose people. This idea of putting that there, and it's Cyclops kind of sitting there saying, hey, listen, any symbol we can have right now, leaving behind, reminding people why they should be thankful we're here, isn't going to hurt us any. I loved that thinking because it makes sense based on where they're at now. And I love when writers throw in things like that, and it's very much reminiscent of we've made a big shift, and we've got to acknowledge it. And that part I liked.
I agree with that as well, and it's not the first time that Cyclops has done something like that. It's also not the first time that Cyclops has been in a situation like this where he's not necessarily he's a hero, but he's also in some ways an outlaw. And the Bendis run was interested in that for a while. The Utopia run touched on that a little bit when there was that divide between the Wolverine school and Cyclops's X-Men on the Utopia Island. And it's character growth for Cyclops that he would believe in a symbol like this to again remind humanity of what they've done wrong to the mutants and that they might not want to do it again because the mutants aren't always nice. Just saying. Wouldn't you rather them be your friend?
Yes. What did you guys think of the QR codes?
Oh, I was just going to start talking about that. Not a fan. I think, and I think Marvel knows that, and they've essentially said that they're not going to be doing it moving forward. For those of you unfamiliar, whether you got it digitally or whether you got it physically, the last page of the books, which can work as an additional page and not necessarily the last page. You had to scan a QR code. Now, my main problem with this is that my easiest way to scan a QR code is with my phone. When I tried to scan it on my phone, I couldn't zoom in on the page. And it was impossible to read it. So I had to open it up on my phone and then scan it with my iPad and then do it that way in order to actually zoom in and read the page. And these pages are additional content. You're not going to lose anything in the book if you don't do it. It's essentially a preview for what's coming next in the title. Just don't hide your last page behind a QR code. Don't do it. It's not a good idea.
I appreciate the attempt at trying to play around with something. I can say that. I was irritated by it. Oh, yeah. I like when they play around with things in comics, so I'm going to give them that. I want experimentation and that type of thing. I am thrilled to hear that they're recognizing it's an experiment gone wrong, only because of the fact that I want to see that artwork as intended. And it wasn't intended for me to be zooming that on my phone. And that's really my only irritation with it is it's the appreciation for the product that's being given to me there. I like toys. So, I mean, the idea of trying to play around with comics and do all that, I want them to keep getting experimental and all that. But do recognize when some experiments, they aren't playing out the way you intended. Yeah. So kind of move forward. Hopefully when they collect all of this, they won't have collected now you've got 27 QR codes.
No, there's no way in hell. If they're smart, they will just include the page in the trade. It's also possible they may just not include the page because I remember them saying at one point, "Oh no, this is just like that added bonus that it's like a DVD extra." But it's not the first time that they've tried to do DVD extras. You might remember in the early days of Marvel Unlimited that there would be like that button you would press in the corner that would open up like a video or something like that, or essentially like a Wikipedia page, Secret Origins type thing where you'd learn more about a character, or there'd be like a bubble, essentially like the bubble, the editor's bubble in old school comics that would explain something like that. That's the type of stuff that I truly enjoy with the digital experience. That's something that adds to it, not something that takes away from reading and makes it where how the hell am I actually going to be able to access this? Oh no, I have to open up the camera on my iPad in order to do it. Like, no, come on. Let's be real here. Not going to happen. I'm not a fan. But nonetheless, it didn't take away from the book. I think that it was a pretty solid first issue that set the stage pretty well. If we were to rate it out of 5, where would we place it? Brent, where would you put it?
I'd place it out of 3. I like this issue, but I felt like a lot of these books didn't really establish a purpose, and this was like, hey, here's a group of X-Men in Alaska. You don't know why. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know why everybody's on the team. Like, all of these were like double-sized issues. So for all the space they had, Jed MacKay sure filled it with action, and I didn't feel like he really filled it with story.
Well, look, if you really want to know why they're there, Alaska. Plain and simple. Thank you.
Terrible.
I'll be here all week. Weddings, bar mitzvahs, yada yada yada. Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Wait, was that why he showed up a little late to this recording? Is this why?
I was thinking of
that. Listen, I got dad jokes.
And that's why I showed up a little bit late. You're 100% right about that, Sean. You know me well enough. What would you give it out of 5, Sean?
An optimistic 3.5. And let me explain the optimistic 3.5. I really like Jed MacKay. I think Jed MacKay is a very good writer. I feel like this was an opening issue. It's like a prologue to a bigger story. I'm intrigued by the story. He's got me hooked. I want to read more. Was I sitting there like going, wow, this issue blew me away? No, but I don't think it was intending to. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay sometimes with a book being, this is introduction to an arc. I'm excited to read the arc. I'm hoping the arc continues to build the way I felt this issue did. So I want to see more. I really like the artwork. They've got me going. I like the story and the characters. I mean, I like it. I don't love it yet, but I'm optimistic that there's a potential for me to really love this book. I'm hoping that it delivers on that potential.
Fair enough. Jim?
I'm at a 4. I'm going Horseman. You know, and I was actually even I was kind of throwing a 5 out there as well. You know, throwing the big thumb in there. It's pick the book up. I felt immediately comfortable. I immediately wanted to read issue 2, you know, and I wanted to learn about Max. I wanted to learn really about what's going on with Charles, what happened with the Krakoa, you know, all that. It did what it wanted. It should have done with a longtime X reader who hasn't been reading for many, 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 many years. It's got me wanting to read again. It's like, when we did the Dark Phoenix saga, it relit a fire for the X books.
Yeah.
This relit a fire for me. This right here had me going, I want to read more X now. I got to find out what books I got to pick up. What's going on here? Where do I read this? I had a list of questions, about, and again, characters who I had no idea who they were, I immediately liked them. So that says the strength of writing, strength of story, in that these two characters, I have no idea who they were. I immediately liked them. I was like, oh, they're kind of cool. And it's funny with the whole Psylocke discussion we had. I thought that was the original. I was like, oh, cool. She's in. All right. Yeah, I know her. No, you don't, Jim. So now I want to learn who that is. I want to learn about her. So yeah, this is solid, again, holding up the Horseman.
I was really hoping you'd throw the big toe in there for old times, but good enough. I'd go about 3.5 myself, almost a 3.75. I really dug the setup here. I got to know the team. I got to know essentially their reasons for existing and why they are where they are. We just need to move from here and see what the upcoming stories are going to tell us more about this team and whether or not we're actually going to get something, further along than just an introduction here. But to get me started on this version of the X-Men, it was a pretty strong start for me. I think we can move on here to NYX, and I will start off by saying this book surprised me. It shouldn't have, considering it's by Kelly and Lanzing. and I've liked almost every single thing that they've done that I've read, but this was my standout. Like I really, really dug NYX. I think that it's absolutely my style. And Jim, going with what you said about different eras of X-Men and whatnot, this era of X-Men brings me back to one of my favorite eras of X-Men, the X-Men Mutant Academy days, where that young X-Men era kind of gets overlooked a lot, and a lot of these characters stem from that specific time in X-Men lore. Prodigy, Anole, and even X-23 to an extent comes from that time. And Sophie Cuckoo, of course, initially being introduced during Morrison's run, but the villains included in this as well were very much from that same era of X-Men. So yeah, I absolutely love this as a first issue, and I'm looking forward to reading this one, probably the most out of the bunch that we're talking about here, quite frankly. Brent, do you agree?
This is my favorite of these first three that we're talking about on this episode.
Yes.
I really like this one. This is the Kamala Khan book. If you're looking for the Miss Marvel book, here she is. Jim,
Yep.
Miss Marvel is both a mutant and an Inhuman. Don't ask me how, but apparently that's still a thing. She still has her same powers. I don't remember if they said what her mutant power was.
She has a mutant. She has a healing power. She has a healing factor.
Okay, from all the stretching she does from her Inhuman power.
Yeah. Well, they said essentially that the mutant power got unlocked when she died, because clearly that's what happens in the Marvel universe. And it unlocked a healing factor when she was revived, and apparently those two powers are fighting each other a little bit. So every time she uses the healing factor, she can embiggen a little bit less. I don't know if that's going to wind up taking away her embiggening ability eventually, but it's essentially two things warring with each other, like the two sides of her, Inhuman and mutant.
I really like this one. This is the one that I was like, this is a great first issue. Here's a bunch of characters. Here's what you need to know about them. Here's an established personality. Prodigy I'm not familiar with. I love Sophie Cuckoo. She was the one that was dating Kid Omega in Krakoa, I believe.
Yep.
So they have some past history there if they cross over. Anole I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar with X-23, with Laura, Wolverine, whatever we want to call her. And then here's a villain. Here's a group of villains to set up for the next time. Like that, to me, this was a great first issue. And I think it had a lot to do with making Kamala like the point of view character for the reader. So as she's getting to know these people, you're getting to know them, because we're assuming you're already familiar with Kamala.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would agree with that as well. Jim, thoughts?
Well, again, another book. I had no idea who any of these people were. Yeah. I had no idea. I kind of knew Miss Marvel, but I really didn't, because of, I had no idea who she was. There was a movie out about Marvels, and I'm like, okay, it's probably her, but I really didn't see that movie, so I don't know anything going on in this. So
Also,
one of those.
She also has a full Disney Plus series as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Didn't watch that either. So I have no idea who she is, who any of these people are. So I was reading this going, okay, it's a neat comic. Yeah, it was going to be kind of all right. Yeah, I read it. Okay, we'll talk about it. Nothing moved. But the thing I did that caught me was, how quickly you could get connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
And how quickly, again, it's the quality of writing, because these are creators. I have no idea who they are, but I like their style. And that was something I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then the final page, when we see who I was calling the new Hellfire Club, I don't know if what it is, but for me, that had that Hellfire feel to like, oh, okay, I like these guys now. And that made my second read through, enjoy it a little bit more. So it was one of those weird things where first read through, I was like, okay, reading it, yeah, we'll talk about it. It'll probably be interesting, but the ending is what locked it in. The ending made me want to read issue 2. Mm-hmm. Going through the first issue, I wasn't going to continue reading this. I would not plan on picking up issue 2. The ending is what got me. And I think that for me is something that's really kind of cool, because I kind of know who I know who X-23 is from the movie, but I don't really know her in the comic book universe, how she is, how she's interacted with people. I kind of have a basic idea of who she is. Everybody else, I was like, I have no clue. And it was funny when I flipped the page to the end there and I saw Sophie's sisters, I initially thought it was her. Like, oh, she's a villain. Wait, no. Oh no, those are sisters. Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember her mentioning that. Okay. Then you start diving into that page. And that was something that the art read through for me really did some cool stuff with, again, the create, because what I do when I read it once through just reading it. Then I do an art read through where I just look at the images. I don't read any words. Mm-hmm. And then I do the third read through where, again, it's another just deep read where I'm taking my time and not just getting from beginning to end. The art read through on this really, again, was one of those really cool moments at last page, looking at all the little details in it. And then even going through with Marvel and Sophie's interaction, when they're hanging around having some coffee and whatnot. I was like, okay, I'm digging how they're crafting this friendship.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the step for Cuckoos have existed again since Grant Morrison's run. So it's a little bit of a in between type of situation. They're usually all on the same side, but there have been times when even though that they're quadruplets, they have differing opinions on things, and this seems to have definitely occurred here. And if they're not the Hellfire Club, they're definitely the Hellions. And it makes me think that although Exceptional X-Men is the book that involves Emma Frost, aka White Queen, in some ways, this book is going to have as much to do with White Queen as anything else, because the Stepford Cuckoos were trained and essentially raised by Emma. They're as much as she had to do with Generation X, she had to do with the Cuckoos. So they're playing a major part here in what's this story is going to be about. Sean, your thoughts on NYX?
So kind of similar to, I think, what was echoed early on in this one. This is the one I was least interested in reading. When I say least interested, I was excited for this relaunch. Anytime you're doing a relaunch, you're hopeful that like all these books are going to excite you, but I kept this one at the bottom of the stack. I knew I was going to eventually get to it. I was interested in reading it, but I was like, okay, this is going to be the Miss Marvel book. Okay. I wasn't quite wrapping my head around like why I should be excited about this till I read it. I read the Miss Marvel stuff as far as in Spider-Man, how she jumped lines. And I actually really like that. I'm a fan of those things as long as there's a reason, where like, okay, does this have legs to it? Are we just doing this for the quick shock value, or are we going to actually do something with it? This is the doing something with it. And not just her, but I really liked all the characters. This is very reminiscent of, and I want to be careful because it's not the same book, and I actually love that it's not. I loved New Mutants as it got crazier as it went along, where it grabbed when like they figured out how to give it some personality. We've gotten to things like Demon Bear Saga and stuff like that, where we're getting into some edgy stories and we're doing something different with the New Mutants. Generation X had some great runs in it where there was some storyline, especially early on when it kicked off. There were some interesting characters that I thought they were really developing well. And those books felt different from an X book. It wasn't X-Men light. They were doing something different. This cast of characters is perfect for this.
It is.
It was fun. It was different. I didn't feel like I was reading the X-Men book all over again, which I think is critical on this. This does not feel like a tacked on also an X-Men title. It is taking advantage of the fact that we've got a pretty rich canvas here. Let's pull in some characters and really have some fun with some different concepts. I found myself loving everybody in this, being surprised. I think, Brent, you said before this is your favorite one out of these three. I get why. It was fun. I really had a good time reading this. And there's something to be said about afterwards feeling like you had fun. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like with this one, when I was done, I'm like, man, it was a good time. I reread it and I loved rereading it. It was just a really good time. And so if you're somebody listening to this and you can kind of like dismissing this book, do yourself a favor, give it a shot, because I think it's going to surprise you. It's a little bit of a different book, and I think it's very accessible. Actually, Jim, you're probably the best one to judge off of this piece as far as, because I walked in knowing these characters, but in your case, I felt like this was pretty accessible to you. And I think it's a fun book. I mean, so highly recommend like kind of checking this one out. It was a surprise though. It was on the bottom of my stack. It was in the stack. So I want to say that. I mean, it wasn't like I was like, guys, you're twisting my arms, making me read this. It was not in that place. I want to be very, very clear. I wanted to read this, but I was waiting to get there because there were other books I was more interested in. Now this has jumped up the stack.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was going to say, in the line of accessibility again, this again, by the end of the book, again, as I said, I wanted to read issue 2, but while this was going on, there's like, I still don't know who this Prodigy guy is or who Eneoloyu or whatever, the green dude, I still have no clue whatsoever who they are, and that's the only thing, like the accessibility. I'm like, okay, what do they do? Who are they? And that is something that's kind of, it's, I don't want to say holding me back because I'm all in on issue 2. I'm going to read issue 2 of this, but those kind of moments do have me going, I don't know, what's going on here.
I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't a team book, but more of a, I want to say menagerie is not quite the right word, a spotlight book. Here's a smattering of characters that are living in New York City. Maybe these are the only mutants in New York City. I don't know. But it feels like, I don't know if this is going to be a team book at the end of the first arc. And I never read the first volume of NYX where they did introduce X-23 in one of those issues. I don't know what that book was at that time either. But it just feels to me like with the spotlight on Kamala and kind of the introduction of all these characters, and then Laura being on the cover for issue 2, maybe that's going to focus on her a little bit more than some of the other characters. So I wouldn't be surprised, at least, if this was a spotlight book on some of these characters. And, because this story is kind of wrapped up, except for, the introduction of the Hellions or the Hellfire Club and stuff like that.
Well, I think it'll be smart to if, as you're saying, spotlight, it'll be smart to spotlight individual characters and then bring together the team and have them, face the enemy, and then from there continue to be together in one form or another. This is reminiscent of a book that Marvel had out a couple of years ago that Mark initiated, and then after that, a couple of other writers took their turn. Champions, which was very much a kind of like a Teen Titans type book in the X universe. Not quite New Mutants, but and there also were some non-mutants involved with it, but it was the younger characters of the Marvel universe gathered together into a team and trying to figure themselves out. And I like that this is now essentially college level New Mutants, bringing together one form or another. I love Laura's new costume and look. It's distinctly unique and different than what Logan would wear, but at the same time has the same general aesthetic of Wolverine, and I'm completely digging that. I love how New York this book is. Shock of shocks. Anybody who knows me, the fact that when Laura attacks Kamala, it's at the vessel at Hudson Yards.
I was gonna say, what the heck is that building?
Yeah, this is actually right by Javits Center. So if you went to New York Comic Con, it's down the block from Javits Center in the recently developed Hudson Yards area of Manhattan. And there's a couple of malls and stuff like that directly next to it. You used to be able to go all the way up the vessel, but then people started jumping off it. So now you can no longer do that. It was a absolutely beautifully designed project, and then now you can basically look up at it. You can enter inside of it, look up at it, but you're not allowed to go anywhere upside of it. I got to go on top of it shortly after it opened, before anything changed. But it's a very unique look and design, and this is certainly the first time I've ever seen it in a comic. So that was pretty cool.
Here's some funny for you guys.
Yeah.
While we were having this conversation is when I finally realized the title. I was getting ready to ask, okay, who's this NYX guy? When's NYX coming in? I was expecting someone called NYX. And then, as we're talking, NYX, like, oh, NYX. Okay, now I get it.
I mean, I say NYX. Maybe it's New York X because the X is bigger than the Y in that. And I don't know.
It's always been pronounced NYX. This is not the first NYX book, Jim. X-23 as a character originally premiered in a book called NYX back in the day. Joe Quesada was behind it, and I forget who else was involved with the
Kyle and Yost, maybe.
I think
that was a TV show.
No, I think that was the TV show. But anyway, that's where Laura first appeared as X-23 in the comics, and then she wound up appearing in a bunch of other places after that, obviously. And the title had about like 2 or 3 miniseries back in the day, and has remained dormant since. And now they're bringing the IP back as this new version of NYX. So whether that's going to be the team name or whether that's just going to be what it's called is another thing, but they're X-genes in New York, and I'm A-okay with that. And it spreads the mutants across the globe and across the country, like I was saying when we were talking about X-Men. It's all different teams scattered about rather than everybody being in the same locale, which is pretty cool.
And I kind of like the idea of them having the opportunity to establish a little bit of an identity before you're doing a lot of crossing over.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an importance for this. I think this is a book that's going to benefit from that.
Yes.
I want, actually, when Brent was mentioning spotlights before, I think that's normal when you're doing a book like this, that you're going to want to be gradually spotlighting characters and kind of seeing it through their focus. I think it worked really well in this first issue. I'd like to see that continue into the second issue because I'm enjoying that kind of journey with them. And I want to get to know these characters. Do I eventually want to see crossover? I love crossovers and stuff. Sure, I want to see that. But I'd like to see some establishment of personality here and what this book actually is, which is, I think, what we're really enjoying right now before we go jumping into all of that. Mm-hmm. So this one's been really successful in what it did. And I'm shocked by how much I liked this one.
I want to say something. This could be controversial. I don't think they did the cover right here. This is a cover. It's by Sarah Pichelli, who used to be, to me, and this is where we get into controversial opinions, Brent, used to be to me a recognizable artist. Not on this cover. And this cover, to me, feels like, and I know this is her new style, and I just don't like it. It's not... Sarah Pichelli used to be beautiful and detailed, maybe a little bit flowery. And she doesn't sign the cover, so I couldn't tell. So I had to open it up and say, who did this cover? Because it's not the interior artist. And I'm saying this now because they did Francesco Moratino wrong by not letting them do the cover, because they are a phenomenal artist. And Jim, I know you didn't watch Miss Marvel, but as we were talking, I recognized this first page. Ian, if you remember the first episode of the Miss Marvel TV show, and you had the 2 directors who went on to then do Batgirl, which never came out. Those poor guys did the colorful graffiti and stuff in the opening scenes of Miss Marvel. You have here on this page, which is basically the new Miss Marvel comic, doing that same thing. So I don't know if that's Francesco Moratino, that's Lanson and Kelly, or definitely the color artist Raul Angulo. Fantastic job harkening back to that awesome first episode of the Miss Marvel show. I still stand episode 1, episode 6, great. Everything else in between, so to sucky, but great setup of like harkening back to people who had just watched that show last year or something like that. But I think the interior artist deserves a distinct shout out, because this is somebody I have not seen before, but like the spread here with Sophie Cuckoo talking to Kamala and just the different expressions. They have distinct features other than the haircuts, which a lot of artists can't do. It's just a really, really cool introduction to a great new artist that I'm going to start taking notice of now, Francesco Moratino. Oh yeah, no, I was just going to start commenting on the artwork here because I think it's terrific. The color work, especially more Torino. Sorry, not Moratino.
Yeah, you're right. It is more Torino. But Raul Angulo does a terrific job with the colors on this book. Every single color pops. Those scenes in the nightclub, where with the pastels and the neons and whatnot, everything just sticks out in ways that it should. And it's busy the way that a nightclub should feel, but at the same time, you still see all the artwork. Like, you could easily get lost in lush colors like that, and it doesn't wind up happening at all in this. And there's diversity of style throughout this, and I really want to see what Francesco Mortarino is able to do in future issues of this, and also just future issues of working with Marvel. Really impressed with the artwork on this.
I really liked her navigation of New York at the beginning.
Yes.
I thought that was really a lot of fun. I love the bright color work there. Like I wanted to be there. It's funny, that power set of her, I really like her. She's one of those characters that when I'm not reading her, I often forget how much I enjoy interacting with her. But you mentioned the TV show before. I liked her on the TV show. And I think that was pretty critical for some of the episodes that helped me get through some of the episodes that ran a little slower, so to speak. I agree with you on the beginning and the ending of it. I actually thought it was a really she got me through. I thought the actress playing her really did a nice job of a character that I really want to enjoy. This might be controversial, I don't know. I actually thought the Marvels was better than Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. And I really liked her in that movie. Her interaction with the other characters, I thought, added some personality where I don't think Carol Danvers always had. The portrayal of Carol Danvers has that personality. So the Marvels, I know, gets trashed and all that, but to me, I thought the better movie was actually the Marvels. I actually thought the interaction. Yeah, I actually thought the interaction between the whole three, I think people missed a decent buddy cop movie.
I agree.
Is it the best MCU movie? No, but it was fun. I like the character, and I hope we don't lose her in the MCU going forward, because I think this sequence in the beginning is very reminiscent of what I like about her. It's not a power set I want. There's a lot of power sets that I'm like, I'd love to do that. I don't need the whole stretchy thing. It's not my thing, but I really appreciate it in comics because I can see somebody that I'd like to be on a team with. Because somebody else can have that power set. Well, I get one of the cool power sets that I want that isn't that. And I can see how we'd work very well together because they can do things that I just don't want to do, but I think would be very useful to have on my team. So it's really a fun part of this book. I really enjoyed following her in this. And to the point of, I'm going back to Brent's point about spotlighting, I felt like she was our spotlight in this one. And if I'm not enjoying her, I'm not enjoying this book. And she was really fun to hang out with. The advantage of spotlights when you do it is you see a lot of characters along the way, but you see them through the lens of that character, which helps you to get to know them in different facets. So I'm hoping Brent's right, and it is going to be a spotlight book, because in that case, you don't ignore the other characters. It's how does that character interact with the other characters? And that worked this first issue. I'd love to see it through Laura's eyes in the second issue. I'd love to see that going forward with other. I haven't read the second issue yet, by the way. I'm excited to, but I'm excited for more of this book and hopefully to see more of these characters from each other's eyes.
And I want to comment on one more thing about this before we get to final thoughts and whatnot. I love how stupid the Krakoan's costume is. I know this isn't the first time that the Krakoan has showed up in comics, and I know that there have been multiple people who have been the Krakoan over time. Are you
confusing this with Captain Krakoa?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm confusing it with. So this is not Captain Krakoa. This is the Krakoan. That's something entirely different. Okay, never mind. Because the Captain Krakoa was kind of like a Eric the Red that other people were. So this is the first time we've seen the Krakoan. Never mind. I will say that I like the motif of it kind of reminds you of Xavier's helmet when he was on Krakoa. It reminds you of Cyclops's uniform with the red that he wore for quite some time, and it just has a general mutant motif going with the Krakoan X on the right shoulder. But that this turned out to be a character that you would be familiar with if you were familiar with, in particular, that era of young X-Men or new X-Men Mutant Academy. Hellion works for me significantly, and I want to know what the hell he's doing running around in a outfit like that, why he's calling himself the Krakoan, and it just fascinates me to see where we're going to go next with this.
The cape and the highlight on the helmet is a total Magneto.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely.
And then, so the Hellion, what the heck are his powers? I'm not familiar with him.
Hellion, let me look it up so I don't.
Is it magnetism? Because that's what he's doing here.
He's got a little bit of everything, if I remember correctly. Let me.
The telekinesis.
Hellion.
The book is listing him as telekinetic.
Yes.
Okay.
Because on that final page, they've got him up there. They're like telekinetic, empath, mind controller, the worst guy in every room. Yep. The Stepford cuckoos, telepath, hive mind, and I was like, and again, as I said, this last page was the thing that locked me in. And then even like when I was doing the just that second read through, my art read through, I noticed how the empath is making the piano player play until his fingers are bleeding. And I'm like, oh, that is just absolutely cruel. That's awesome. I want that as a villain.
I was looking at this last page and I'm going, okay, is empath controlling the cuckoos? Because
no,
his eyes are glowing and they have the the pink things around their head. But then Sophie Cuckoo pages earlier has the same thing when she's using her powers. So it's just a visual cue that they're using their powers for comic books.
Correct.
But it's kind of weird that it's all pink.
Yeah,
so
they could have had his power set be a blue or something like that to change that up a little bit. But yeah, no, he's not controlling them. He's definitely controlling the other people at this point. I mean, definitely controlling the pianist, because there's no way he on his own.
that was a neat thing. I actually love that. And again, the Krakoan or Hellion or whichever he is, he was a nice villain to have there. I'm like, okay, we got some good power sets here. So, this is a good way to really wrap things up for me. And and all you guys stuff you were saying about the art team, I'm 100% behind that. I'm going to say yes, and just add a big yes on that. This was a beautiful book. So this, again, as I said, going through it, I was reading it the first time through, and okay, just reading it, I was enjoying it, but I wasn't locked in. That this final page, this is how you end a book to get people wanting more, and that right there has me wanting more.
And was it the QR code that you had to get to that final page, or was it?
Well, I'll be honest with you, you guys were talking about the QR codes. Me, Sean. I never scanned them. Never scanned them. I didn't know that I should scan it. I don't even know how to scan a QR code.
So you take your phone, you open up the camera on it, and then you hold it up to the QR code, and you're able to scan it in from there. And from what I'm remembering about this particular page, in fact, I'll scan it in with my phone right now. Just so
wait a second. Here's what I love the irony of this.
Yeah.
Brent is showing this. So we are in a Zoom screen with the four of us in 4 mini screens. We were just talking about how annoying it is to see it on our phones. So now what we're doing is scanning it and showing it on our phones in a much smaller window to illustrate it.
This is how I did it, and this is why I don't like it. Like, I'm mostly a digital reader, and I went and said, all right, we're going to do all these issues. I'm going to go buy the physical issues. Mm-hmm. So I read on my iPad, though. I don't read on my phone, ever. Yeah. So, but I'm reading this one, and it never occurred to me to go. It was just annoying. I'm like, my iPad's over here. I'm reading a physical book. I do have my phone on me, so I scanned them all on my phone, and then I'm like doing this on their webpage. Like, what is this? And then the terrible thing is you zoom in on your phone, and it's not even a good scan. Mm-hmm. It's all pixelated. Like, Marvel, you've got a full-size image of this. It should be, better resolution than this. It's terrible.
And again, on my Android phone, I'm trying to zoom. It ain't happening. So
My
No
iPhone's
no
working
pinch for you?
fine.
no
And I'm
pinch.
an idiot, technically speaking.
My
so-
iPhone pinch and zoom.
My Android ain't doing it. So that's why I had to open it on my iPad, because it worked on the iPad. It didn't work on there. So it must be something with the programming of the page
Weird.
that doesn't work right on my phone. But oh well. But
I do want to say this, to be fair. When I took like the screenshot of it on my iPhone and then opened it up on my iPad, I did find it was a much better experience. And, I mean, because you can actually like see the artwork and everything like that. And so I, as a playful concept, I do appreciate the attempt. I do recommend, though, if you have the opportunity to open it up on a tablet, please do. It doesn't work well on a phone.
it doesn't. Yeah.
I don't even know if you could do it. Like, can you send the link to yourself and open it on a PC or something like that? How do you do a QR code on a web thing? Like, can somebody scan this and do it now?
I actually went into my shared history, my shared Google history, and it showed tabs open on other device, and I was able to open it up on my computer just now. So that is one way to do it if you know how to do it that way. And that's
a lot of steps.
Oh yeah, this was also an extra page that I felt like was a little bit more necessary than some of the other pages were. As we get treated, I mean, again, this is a preview that I'm sure we're going to get more of this. Whoever this smiling character is in the future. Is it Mr. Sinister? Is it Arcade? Is it someone else? Who knows? But clearly there's another main villain behind whatever's happening here in NYX that we haven't gotten to yet, that is displayed in this bonus page that you have to open with a QR code.
I'd like to hear from some of your listeners, because you've got your Facebook group going and things like that. Does anybody like this? And I don't mean it like in a setup way. I'd like to hear, if you do, like what is it that you like about it? I mean, it's kind of a cool thing, because this obviously was an attempt to make this fun for an audience. Mm-hmm. So, as we talk about like this being new reader friendly, it's actually I'm enjoying having this conversation with Jim, because I didn't recognize, like, wow, he really is kind of the target reader when you do a reboot like this.
Oh yeah.
So it's fun to see that piece. But I'd love if anybody out there's like, no, the QR code thing was fun, and it's okay if you don't have to agree with anybody here on it. I'd love to hear if you are digging it and what you dig about it. I just like to see the perspective.
It might be the same sliver of people that used the Marvel AR codes 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I was talking about that earlier, Brent. I think you might have stepped away. That like I dug the AR back in the day. Yes. I think that was a good additional feature. It wasn't something that was necessary, but it was an additional feature that gave you a little bit of behind the scenes goodness. That's the type of added content that I like. Additional, not necessary. So. Who knows? And I will point out one more thing about the artwork that I appreciate. They got the 7 train right in New York. The 7 train is indeed the train that goes to Hudson Yards, and it is indeed the train that's in that part of Queens. So I don't have to yell at my screen and be like, I'm the only one who cares about this, but it's the right train. So enough said.
Oh, I thought you were going to complain that it was always broken because the X-Men are fiddling with it.
Oh well, that too, actually, and it would explain why the 7 train's always down whenever there's a convention in town, which pisses me the hell off. All right, we talked about that on our anime NYC episode. It was doing shenanigans that weekend when a whole bunch of people were heading to Javits Center and wanted that to be their last stop. But New York, baby. Let's get our ratings for NYX here. I'm gonna give this a solid 4.5. To be honest with you, I think this was a damn good first issue, and it has me intrigued at what's to come, and I can't wait to get there. Brent?
5 out of 5.
Right on. Nice. Very good.
Perfect score.
Sean?
I'm going with 4.5 myself, but I'm actually not. When Brent was doing that, I wasn't like sitting here going, "Oh my god, you gave it a 5." It is that level of excitement. This was a surprise, and really, I was going to give it a 4, And what led me to the 4.5 was it gets the extra points for the fact that this shocked me at how much I really enjoyed it. I was not expecting that from the experience, and it takes a lot to take characters that are Miss Marvel. I'm not saying she's lesser known or X-23 is lesser known, but we don't have that like Cyclops, that mainstay. So that's always a risk when you do that. I think that was actually an advantage to this book.
Oh yeah,
in the sense that I was really intrigued by the fact that I wanted to follow the characters that were here. I kudos to them, and easy 4.5.
And outside of Miles Morales, Ms. Marvel is probably the biggest character that has premiered in Marvel in the last 20 years. So it's also good to have a character like that to back up X-23. So X-23, Ms. Marvel, and Miles Morales are probably the three that you can point to as the next generation characters that have really caught on at Marvel. Definitely, Jim.
Well, again, this was one of those this did a roller coaster for me. Initially, I was like, okay, it's a good book. It's a 2, maybe a 3. Okay. Then as I said, I get to that last page. I was like, oh, that has me interested. And then art read through again, you really start diving in, you start seeing and start appreciating it, which again raises up the numbers. And I can start throwing out some Steiner math here, but I'm not going to bother anybody with that one. I'm going to say it's easily a solid 3.5 for me.
Nice. All right. And we will conclude this half of our 6 that we're going to be discussing on our various shows with X-Factor number 1. Now, Brent, you talked about the cover to NYX and you not liking it. This is Greg Land. That he sure is a divisive human being when it comes to his artwork. I don't hate it. I actually don't hate it this time around.
I was going to say, this is the one time that when I opened the book, I was disappointed that it wasn't Greg Land art.
Oh, God.
Wait, how does that? I think I said that backwards. I was disappointed it wasn't Greg Land. I was like, I saw the cover and I'm like, Greg Land's not working. He's in this book. And I opened the book and it's not Greg Land. And I went, oh, it's not Greg Land. And then as I read it, I'm like, I kind of wish this would have been Greg Land, because Greg Land, as much as people love and hate him, he has a shiny, slimy sheen to his artwork that would have fit the tone of this book interiors perfectly, instead of what Bob Quinn gives us, which I felt was helped out a lot by the colorist as opposed to just the artwork. I'm saying that as nicely as I can.
Okay.
And what's weird, this is what's weird about this, is like Bob Quinn and Francesco Moratino on NYX, similar styles, but there's still, you can tell which one is, in my taste, a better illustrator than the other one. I don't know, just me.
All right, interesting. Sean, go ahead.
The cover is an interesting one for me because I think it did everything a cover should do. It sets you up for the interiors.
Yeah.
Without going too far. It really was an intriguing lead into this book. And I thought this was the top. Like, it's funny when we were talking about the last cover and nobody was like really like through the roof on the cover on that one. This one I really liked what the cover did and how it took me to the experience of this book. And I'm not trashing the previous cover. I don't mean it that way. But this one really, like, I'm looking at the cover right now and I'm still excited for the pages that are in between because of the story that's there, which I'm obviously revealing a lot right there as far as how I feel about this book. But I think we're going to have an interesting conversation on this one. I don't know if everybody's in the same place I was on this one, but this cover, I thought, really matches the interiors and what was going on the inside.
Definitely. Yeah, 100% on that one. And this one was written by Mark Russell. Mark Russell, I'm a huge fan of. The Fantastic Four life story that he did, both the Superman and the Batman stuff that he's been doing of late.
Dark Age.
Dark Age. It's terrific. And the general premise of X-Factor here going into it and I talked about this on our Krakoa episode a little bit, kind of felt like it was a little bit in between the original concepts of X Factor, which was a team that was, pretending to be this, government facing superhero team, but was actually out there trying to help and save mutants, and the Peter David era, where they were a little bit closer to working with the government. And it definitely had a much more lighthearted feel to it, or at least a funnier feel to it than the version that had the original 5 X-Men in it. And this is a little bit in between the two. There is a big twist in this that we'll get to as we discuss the book a little bit further. But Jim, your outsider's thoughts on this version of X Factor?
Well, again, I'm right now reading the initial launching of X Factor right now. I'm going through that stuff, and it was funny because Sean and I talked a little bit about it on the show, and I was like, I kind of remember. And then as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, I read all this stuff. I read, and I was just, all this stuff was just sort of coming back to me. So when we're talking X Factor, first thing I see the cover, I like this cover. This looks pretty cool to me. And again, right there up front, Angel, like, of course, Angel's got to be in charge of X Factor, and just how this thing laid it out, I was like, this is a really cool version of X Factor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have the middle version that you were talking about, the Peter David run. I only have the initial stuff. Right. So I only know of, the
Didn't you read the Strong Guys, Jim? Didn't you read the Strong Guy stuff, though?
I remember.
I've known you a long time. I thought you were very into the Strong Guy, boom, boom stuff, all from that era. Am I wrong on that?
I read Strong Guy, and I like Strong Guy.
That was Peter David.
Okay. I read that run then.
Yes. No, the reason why is in our conversations about comics, you referenced how much you enjoyed that era of X Factor. Mm-hmm. I don't think you knew who you were reading. And I didn't. Wait, no. It sounds like I'm knocking you. I promise I'm not.
I know.
But what I'm saying is, more to tell you, you read the Peter David run and really enjoyed that run. Mm-hmm. So it's just from a reference point to connect the dots for you. I didn't really mean that as the dig it came out.
Well, no, but hold on my end,
I've done that exact thing where I'm like, oh yeah, no, I really enjoyed that. Wait a minute, that was by who? Oh, okay, all right, go figure. So,
Claremont's X-Men. That I love Claremont's X-Men, and it wasn't until we started doing our show and Sean and I were talking about X-Men and the time period, and so I was like, yeah, that's the Claremont X-Men run that you absolutely love. Like, oh, really? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. So, so now I've got another one that I was like, oh, I didn't know I love that.
And that had Havoc in it as well. So
yes.
Those are the two linchpins of the two versions of X Factor. You've got Angel from the original X Factor in this book, and you've got Havoc from that era, and both of which very much have their past in it, as well as also Rusty. Fire Fist in this, but him showing up. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm going by Fire Fist now. Okay, Fist Fire. No, Fire Fist. Oh, okay, fine. But him very much premiering in early X Factor and playing a part in this.
So he's not a new character?
No, Rusty's existed. Yeah, Rusty has long existed in the comics.
I've never read a Fist Fire comic until now.
Well, he was never called Fire Fist until now. He almost always just went as Rusty.
And by the way, Rusty, not on this cover.
Yes. No, he's not.
Many characters on the team, not on this cover.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is
much
true.
like another book we'll talk about later.
Uh-huh.
Many characters on this cover, not in the book.
Preview of what's to come. But
he was in, by the way, he was in Deadpool too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God, Sean, what'd you think of this first X Factor?
It was not at all what I expected, and I enjoyed it. It took me a while to get what was going on here, just in the sense that I think I walked in with preconceived notions. I enjoyed this book. It's going to be an interesting one. I think there's a potential for this to be a really intriguing series. I'm hoping it leads to that. They're attempting something edgy here with this. They're obviously they're making this very today and very much how the media would start taking over and stuff like that. And X Factor's got a history of being a book that when it broke out of being like the by the way, I loved the original X-Men era of it, but it hit a certain point in time where they needed to change it up a bit to keep the book going. And when they did that, it was a book that got at times experimental in its eras. I feel that that's what they're trying to do with this. I enjoyed that aspect of it. It took me a little bit to get there, though, as I was reading the story, just because of the fact that I walked in, I think, kind of expecting comfort food X Factor, and I got something experimental that I was enjoying. So I got there. I really enjoyed my reread because it was a chance to go, okay, now I know what they're doing with this. Let me go back through and get the story experience, kind of knowing what they're up to. I'm very curious to see where this book continues to go as it goes forward. But it was certainly not what I was expecting going through. But I do think the cover leads you into where it does go and what they were doing with this piece.
Oh yeah,
I don't want to be on this team. I want to be very, very clear.
Why?
Yeah, I what I don't know is maybe I was on this team. I mean, because hey, pretty much expendable on that. This may be my only chance to be on the X-Men because I think they may, if I have a colorful enough costume, they may put me in an issue, and I'm just not sure I'll make it out of it.
Well, what I like about this book is it reminds me of multiple things. It reminds me of Justice League International in its style and personality. Even the artwork can be very Kevin Maguire at times with the facial expressions and whatnot. I also think that this has shades of Ecstatics in its setup. Where it's especially with the execution of this in the first issue of that, back when it was X-Force before it became Ecstatics, and that first issue, you're introduced to a bunch of characters that you never see again because they're all killed off in the first issue. Spoilers, and then you wind up being introduced to an entirely new team after that, and that's kind of the setup you're getting here. And in a way, it reminds me of the New Warriors book that then led up to Civil War. That was the first book that Marvel put out that kind of had like shades of a reality show. And then that New Warriors team wound up making huge mistakes, which then led to a giant crater in the middle of Connecticut, which then led to Civil War. So it's kind of like all those plus the original versions of X Factor all had a baby, and that's how you wind up with this book. and I'm not mad. I actually really, really like the personality and style that they're looking to execute here. I also like that XF logo that they're using for the X Factor in this. It's nice and sleek and works well with the execution. But I'm curious where this is going to wind up going. How many different characters we wind up getting? Whether it's going to be more characters in the X Factor universe of it all as time moves on. If we're going to see any of those characters that quote unquote die here in this first issue again, would be a good question. But I love the character building that they do with Havoc and Polaris. Apparently, Havoc was a zombie, but he's better now. That's unnecessary, and you don't need to know anything about that outside of the fact.
Some weird stuff going on with him and Spider-Man. It was weird.
It was a long story. None of which that is relevant here, but clearly, diametrically opposed feelings about being a mutant, which is also funny because once upon a time, Havoc, during the Uncanny Avengers days, tried to say that mutant was a slur, and clearly he doesn't feel that way anymore.
His positions haven't his positions may have changed, but his values haven't changed, Ian.
Yes, Brent, you're absolutely right, sir. You're absolutely right. But he refuses to just go by Havoc like Lorna's going by Polaris. He's going to go by Alex because that's the name that he wants to go by. But yeah, overall the action in this is kinetic. The surprise twist of it's all about the ratings, baby, and it doesn't matter whether or not you're going into suicide situations. What matters is if we get the clicks and we get the likes. Like and subscribe. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to the Comic Timing YouTube page, please do so over at youtube.com/Comic Timing Podcast. But nonetheless, I dug this. I think it was a good execution, good premise, and I'm definitely in for what's to come. Brent, your thoughts and opinions?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's. I haven't read a bunch of X-Factor ever, so I have no attachment to the team. Mm-hmm. So this idea of government super team, Suicide Squad, I'm just like, do we need this in Marvel? Like, I've read this before, kind of like. I don't know. It didn't grab me. It didn't grab me. There's nothing wrong with the writing. I like Mark Russell in general. He's not somebody that I like rail against like I do Tom King. So I could see myself reading another issue of this. I just don't know if it's going to grab me as a concept because I don't know enough about the X characters that I'm like caring that, oh no, Fire Fist died or Feral. But I think that's part of the joke is she gets booed and has all of 3 lines in the thing and then she's dead by the end of the first issue. I'm not sure.
Well, so. Farrell's claim to fame is not Wolfsbane. That's basically what Farrell's claim to fame is. So many times they've just like accidentally drawn Wolfsbane when they're drawing her, and like no, they're different characters, very very different characters. Don't do that, but it happens all the time.
One of the things that I like that they did here, and it was Brent referenced it before, and I totally agree with his thought process that you do not have to read what happened to him in Spider-Man for a lot of reasons. Yeah. I'm a Spider-Man fan, by the way. I was reading the book and overall enjoyed the book, but what happened to Havoc it's not something I was kind of like, this is not must reading. But I want to say this, as somebody who read that, and the conclusion of that storyline and where all of that went, I really appreciate in a shared universe where when you're moving a character in a different direction, like they are with this, they have not dropped that.
No.
You don't have to give it like a ton of acknowledgement. You do what you did here. And honestly, his demeanor and kind of where he's at emotionally fits where the wacky that he went through in order to be in this spot. I really appreciate that because you got to honor the fact that you've got readers who are invested in reading in your stories. And when you just kind of drop somebody and there's no explanation, I hate that.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to go crazy. I don't need a lot of, to Brent's point, you don't need a lot of exposition here. Some stuff happened in Spidey that was pretty wacky from him that left him a little messed up. let's move along and kind of like see where this character goes from that place that he was in. And if you read that, you appreciate the connection. And I did read it, and I do appreciate the connection. So that way I see how he got here. And I always appreciate when writers take the time to put in continuity in the appropriate manner. Don't beat me over the head with it. And you didn't. And you certainly didn't. You didn't need to here. Well, because I like them. I like them moving on with Havoc.
Yes, and Sean, we talked about all the weird things that have happened to Beast over the years and all the crazy things that have happened to Beast over the years. Yeah, Havoc's been through some shit.
Yes, he has since his origins, actually.
My favorite thing about Havoc, and this also quotes Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, one of my favorite podcasts. Havoc will never get his dissertation. Like, he will never be able to finish college. Like, he'll go back to college, he'll start it up again, but he will never get that degree. It'll just never happen. That's all he's ever wanted in life.
But I would argue you could do a dissertation on Havoc.
Oh my God, yes. This is a man who was lived like a solid 100 issues of comic books in an entirely alternate reality. Mutant X, which had its ups and downs, but it still, I think, is one of the best things Howard Mackey's ever done. It was a weird ass universe, but he was there for a lot. There was a time when he turned evil because there was an event in Marvel where the villains went good and the heroes went bad, but then when everything got reversed, he was still technically evil. So they had his personality was essentially on its head for a while there. Then, yes, he became a zombie. Oh my God, so many freaking things have happened to Havoc over the years. He lost control of his body, like his powers at one point. Oy.
Yeah, I want to read all this now. You're making me want to dig this up and read it.
Mutant X in particular is good. If you're into alternate realities and alternate takes on characters, I think that was actually a bright spot at the time, pre-Exiles and stuff like that. It was a nice place to put him after they had canceled that Peter David X-Factor book. Finally, by the time it was done, it was a mercy kill. It had gone through multiple creators and didn't know which way it was going. But at the end of that issue, he winds up in an alternate reality and is there for a solid 4 years until he comes back. And everybody in the X-Men is like, "Oh, hey, Havoc, what's up? Where you been?" And he's like, "Oh, it's a long story, man. I had a kid."
You didn't know I was missing from this plane of existence? You didn't care?
Well, one thing that I'm very happy about is on this last page. Not only do we get Pyro filling the role of Fire Fist, so you get yourself a nice fire wielder. You get Frenzy in there as your strength. Zyber is still alive. I can't believe I'm still alive. But Granny Smite. I want to know more about this character.
Yes, I'm all in on Granny
Is this the first
Smite.
appearance?
I think this is Granny Smite's first appearance because she does not sound like she's been anywhere else. And I just saw a Screenland article. The newest X-Men hero is literally trying to die on every page. That's apparently what Granny Smite's going to be up to in this.
She's got a death wish.
Yep. But Cecilia Reyes, that made me very happy.
Me too.
I'm a huge Cecilia Reyes fan. Yeah. Brent, I doubt you've read any of that 2000s stuff with Cecilia in it, right?
I remember being at a Boy Scout camp with an issue of X-Men.
Yeah.
With a cover with Cecilia Reyes and Nightcrawler on it and a red background.
Okay.
That's as much as I've read.
All right.
And I was like, who's this?
Fair enough. Cecilia Reyes, for both your sakes, Brent and Jim, is a X-Men character that was introduced in the early 2000s. Might have even been the late 90s, to be honest with you. It might have been 99. But anyway, she was introduced at that point, along with Maggot and a bunch of other characters, as kind of like a next generation. Her whole deal is that she's a doctor first. She has a protective force field. And it's protective. It's not something that she uses, to project or anything like that. I think she eventually found a way to do that. But more than anything else, she's there as the doctor. And I hope that's how they use her here at X-Factor, because apparently there's going to be a lot of injuries involved with this team. And you're going to need somebody like Cecilia Reyes on your side. And I hope that at some point they finally actually have the relationship that they teased once upon a time between Cecilia Reyes and Beast Hank McCoy, because I think they had excellent chemistry back in the day, and I'd love to see that happen again. But who knows? So
she's got her costume has her with a medical bag, so I'm assuming that we're going to get that same kind of character. And again, I no idea who she was, so thank you for the explanation. Yep. I saw the medic, so I was like, okay, some type of healer or something. And again, like you said, Granny Smite, I 100%. I want to know who thought of that idea, who came, what magnificent, wonderful creature said, "Oh yeah, let's have a Granny X-Men. Let's have a Granny Mutant." I want to know what her powers are. Considering it's Smite, she's got to have superhuman strength. She's got to have some type of power blast thing. So this little old lady's going to walk up to you. "Okay, Shitty." Wham! I want to see that so bad.
Oh my God. Oh, and I forgot to say, Cecilia Reyes, born in the Bronx and is Puerto Rican. So that's also, she's got that going for her. So good times. Yeah.
X-Factor has not been kind to Angel.
No.
I mean, like that dude has gone through a lot in this book over like if I'm Angel, you want to put me in what book? No. Just no. Like when he's in that sequence where he's in the hospital bed and everything there, I'm just like sitting here like, oh my gosh, does this guy get beat up in X-Factor books?
Oh my God. No, my favorite part. My favorite part was when listen, people are gonna go nuts the first time you turn into Archangel.
I can't do that.
I can't turn into Archangel anymore. Did you even?
We can't keep it straight either, Angel.
Yeah, but did you even read my resume?
I don't think as a resume builder you would put like special powers like can turn into Archangel and then cannot turn into Archangel. Like that would not be a resume builder. Like, hey, you think I have cool powers? I actually don't.
Well,
I like putting, I can't code C++ on your software engineer resume.
Yeah, that's true. No, can you do C++? Sure.
Formerly death, but I'm better now. I'd explain that one away.
I need them to break up the blonde-haired regimen of this team. Like, Angel and Havoc have the same face mask in this book.
Yeah.
And the same haircut. The only difference between them is one has wings.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, they did.
One drinks Red Bull.
they actually did break all that up for you. I mean, how much did you want it broken?
Well, maybe issue 2 or 3, they're going to be in the same outfit.
Oh,
one will have a jacket, one will have wings. That'll be the difference, I guess.
I also like the use of Darkstar in this. Darkstar is a character that regularly is used as a villain. Occasionally shows up on a more heroic side of things, but I like the premise and concept of her team, the Exterm, but not the exterminators, just Exterm, and that they go in there to try to stop their operation and fail miserably in the process. Was obviously gonna wind up happening in a book like this where it's all suicide missions. But Darkstar is a character you don't see very often, and I was glad to see her in this, and I think she was used pretty well.
And she survived too, so
yes.
She's not done. We're not done with her yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing where she goes and what happens with this. This again, I absolutely loved the concept of this book. How it went from being they're not mutants in hiding, helping other mutants. They're now clickbait and just getting likes and this and that. And I just love that whole sensationalization of it with the red carpet and that the opening scene when the shapeshifter shows up as Beast. I was like, yay, Beast! Oh, I laughed out loud at that one. I was like, oh, that is brilliant. This is going to be a fun, cool book. And then it went, it went really dark with killing off most of the team, but also at that awesome moment of Havoc and Polaris. I really dig what was going on with them. So that's, again, this book has some really fun moments. Unfortunately, it's fun at the expense of people getting horrifically dying, but it's still fun for me, but also has some serious, more, the real moments, that we're seeing with and again, Polaris was there when Havoc made his debut. She was hiding in the background, so she's not out of this mix yet. So things are going to get interesting with this one. I'm very happy with this story. I'm loving this.
Yep. Also recommend scanning the QR code.
Oh, yes.
I know I'm ripping that apart and all that kind of thing, but in truth, this is an example of a page where you want to look at the QR code because it actually sets up some
that one, yes,
extra stuff. Which I thought was actually I'm like, oh, this is a worthwhile scan.
Yeah, it's again a setup for what's to come. It might not even be what happens in issue 2, but we know that there's something behind a door that we don't know about that is clearly going to be important to the plot at some point. That you will know about if you scan the bonus page of that. Yeah, but and the fact that Cameo is essentially a cameo in this book, like Cameo doesn't have a lot to do. Cameo just shows up as Beast, then gets an egg thrown at him, and I also love the line, "No fans within egg distance."
That could be a pretty long range,
Yeah, no, definitely. But no,
does Cameo, does he go on the mission? He does.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Cameo got stuff
Bearded
dropped
dude.
on him.
That's right.
Yeah, Cameo went and didn't come back.
yeah, Cameo is probably not coming back. Farrell may theoretically, because I know Farrell has had some sort of healing factor in the past, so it's possible that Farrell might actually make it out alive. We know Angel made it out alive, and the joke essentially is that Zyber made it out alive. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else actually did. So that might be the 8th time Rusty has died. Rusty dies a lot.
Oh my God, they killed Rusty.
You bastards. And of course my brain goes Venture Brothers as well. Hello, Rusty. Yeah. But no, I would straight up give this a 4. I was very interested in what they had to offer here, and I want to see what winds up happening with the new team, and whether or not they're able to survive the second issue, or if it's going to take them a little bit longer to lose another member. But overall, positive setup here, good execution, and has me intrigued for what's to come. Sean?
I was wavering between 3.5 and 4, and I'm giving it 4 for a reason. I'm optimistic about where this is going to go, and I want it to be one of the series that you mentioned. You were rattling off a bunch of great series that have done wacky things.
Yeah.
I would add in something like a Quantum and Woody and stuff like that in its better years as well, too, where it was an example of a series that just was intriguing and fun and had those kind of pieces to it. I am hopeful this winds up having that kind of thing to it, because I'm itching for something like this. I felt like I honestly feel the QR code on this one too, to be clear, gave me more of that JLI feel that you were talking about earlier, which not a cookie cutter to it. I'm not saying that, but it's kind of that there's enough serious substance to the craziness that's going on in this book that's taking me through this one. I think it could be something different. So I'm very optimistic based on the first issue on hoping this series is going. I'm hoping that the issues 2 and 3 live up to kind of where my head's at with it right now. But so I admittedly was wavering between the two though.
Fair enough. And after this, we're all going to join Click Clock. No, we're not. What do you give it? What do you give it, Jen?
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm doing the Horseman again. 4. Woo!
Steve McMichael approves. Well done.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Brent?
2.5.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think the concept for me is a little bored and tired, and I don't know if I like wacky in my comic books. I'm not a huge Deadpool comic book guy. I'm more like it in movies and TV, I guess. So just humor for me sometimes doesn't come across in comic books. So I don't know.
All right. Fair enough. You can't win them all. That's what I've learned over the years. You can't win them all.
Everybody's entitled to opinion, and you can be wrong. So yeah,
I agree. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like when I forced Brent to read a Doctor Who comic back in the day, and he said it was one of the worst things he ever read.
That's the only Doctor Who I've ever watched or read. That right there.
You started him on comics?
that was back in the day of the review corner, back when Heroes Corner was still a thing, and that was our independent for the month. It was I think it was a Tennant miniseries with the one that had the Pia Guerra art, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Which was very, very good. The artwork was excellent, and Brent thought that the story was a pile of trash. But so it goes. Gentlemen, I think we have done an excellent job of going into these 3 issues, and goddamn, was it fun to hang out with you fellas for the first time.
You are now and always will be my ambassador of Quan.
Ah! What is?
Hold on.
Yeah. Wow, man. Throwing that one out there, Jim, man. I have not thought of that one in many, many years. But no, thank you so much, Sean, Jim. It's absolutely a pleasure, and let's not make it like 8 years until the next time we do one of these. This is absolutely
we have 3 more books to do, guys.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a week.
Absolutely. But thank you very much for coming here on Comic Timing, at least. And we will be appearing on Raging Bullets for the next 3 books, which we very much look forward to. But let everybody know where they can find Raging Bullets.
RagingBullets.com. And it's the easiest place to find out what's going on with Raging Bullets. Our next 3 books that we're going to be doing is Uncanny X-Men, Exceptional X-Men, and Phoenix.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And look forward to season 3 of Raging Bullets in 15 years.
You're optimistic. We usually go longer.
And Brent, your usual plug for your usual things.
My plug is my YouTube channel, BK's Bullets. If you get it right the first time, don't change the name. Doing reviews up there. I pre-recorded a whole bunch of stuff, so we got stuff for weeks. Two episodes a week. There you go.
Weeks, baby, weeks. Absolutely. And I want to say before we get into the credits here that we are very, very happy that those of you who have joined us here and any of you who came from Raging Bullets, head on over to the Comic Timing fan group and join that. It's a great place to hang out and talk comics. It's been growing over the past couple of months, and I really enjoy my conversation over there, and hope to have you guys join in as well.
Sean.
If I could shout out one more thing too, bi-weekly I'm on Is It Jaws with Paul Spataro. So it's a film review podcast, and I highly recommend people check that out as well.
Yes, indeed. And maybe the next time he wants me to do Back to the Bins, I'll actually be available, because I feel like every single time Paul messages me, it's like, oh, yeah, sure. And then something comes up last minute and I wind up having to cancel. But I hope to be on Back to the Bins sometime in the next couple of months as well. Paul's an absolute joy, and I love talking to him. So excellent. All right. And with that, let's go ahead and do the outro, shall we? The email address for Comic Timing is comictiming@gmail.com, facebook.com/Comic Timing for our Facebook presence. And of course, you can find us over at said Comic Timing fan group, which you can find from there as well. Twitter.com/Comic Timing Pod. We are Comic Timing Podcast on Instagram and Threads. We're also Comic Timing Podcast on YouTube, and we're Comic Timing on Blue Sky. And once again, much, much, much appreciated to the Raging Bullets guys for joining us. Always appreciated to Casina, even when he's in a hotel room, missing out on his steak. And as always, there's always time for comics.